everybody, welcome to Seniors Month. This is our first panel event of the month, and this one is called The Age Advantage, Celebrating Seniors and Combating Ageism. I'm here with some fantastic panelists from all around EXP. We've got Cindy Nixon, we've got Eve Hill, and we've got Jim DeWolf, and I can't be more excited to be here. So let's go ahead and start by just introducing yourselves, giving a little bit of your experience and what has drawn you to work with the senior population. I'll start with you, Cindy.
Sure, and thanks so much. Happy to be here. So I am the Senior Director of Global Mobility, which includes relocation and affinity services. Throughout my career, I have had the distinct pleasure of working both not only just with seniors that are corporately relocating, but also transferees that are working to relocate with aging parents, and there's a huge need for that. But also I've had the ability to work with seniors in a mentorship as well, and have had many amazing mentors throughout my career. And it's something that I love to talk about, and ageism is something that is, really apparent, and there's a lot of things we can do to change that. So happy to be here.
Great to have you, Cindy. Then we'll move over to Eve. Eve was featured last year. We had an episode of the Culture Cast podcast you should check out about ableism or ageism. Excuse me. Jeez, I keep doing
that. That was a good one.
That was a great episode. Yeah.
I may be revisiting some of my points here today. Hi. Yes, I'm Eve Hill. I'm a realtor and a certified aging in place specialist in Ventura County, California. I work with older adult homeowners and their families to modify their homes for aging in place, or I help them find a home that better suits their needs, and I connect them with the aging in place resources in their community. I advocate for the beauty and benefits of universal design principles. I serve on the National Aging in Place Council Advocacy Committee and my local Ventura County Coastal Association of Realtors Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And the truth is most older adults want to age in their homes, but less than 10% of our homes can accommodate someone with a mobility issue. So I think our home design, like ageism, is a manufactured barrier that we can work to disrupt, starting with things like this in education and awareness.
I love that. That's beautiful. And listen, when we're talking about aging in place, something that is available to you now is the interactive senior home that we built in Frame. So you can go to, there's the link down there, exp.world/interactive-senior-home, and that will take you right to the new improved version of that. That's actually a house and not an office that's made to look like a house this time. All right, Jim, your turn.
What, I have to follow Eve? How do I follow that? It's like trying to follow Carson. Hey, Jim DeWolf here, and as Eve, I am also a realtor with SRES designation, and hey, Eve, you'll enjoy hearing this. I just got my CAPS designation too, Certified Aging in Place Specialist. I also have a company called Next Chapter Senior Solutions, which works with seniors and their families to connect the resources that are needed in the senior community as they move to their next living environment, whether it's with a home, whether it's aging in place, or whether it is with a senior community. We help put those resources together to help with that transition to the next chapter. In my experience, in my professional life, I've had some experience working with senior communities in a management capacity for a number of years. And then coming into the real estate world, realizing that there was a great need for resources, for education, for understanding what this population is and where they're going. So I'm glad to be here today.
We're thrilled to have you. We're going to circle right back to round with you and go the other way for this question. But what inspired you to focus on senior advocacy and combating ageism in your work in your community?
I don't know if there was one single thing that inspired me. It was kind of, like I said, creating that understanding in my mind that there's a need. You know, what are we mostly trained to do? Find a solution, right? And when I started speaking with friends of mine, with family members, and with other family members of friends, I started to realize that there was a growing segment of our market. You know, we've been talking about this silver tsunami for 25 years, and guess what? It's here. And we're all surprised that it's here. but there is a growing segment of our population that is in need, that needs solutions, that needs an understanding. And so wrapping all that together kind of brought me to where I am today.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's later this month, we've got an episode of the podcast with Heather Brooks, the chair of the Seniors Network, where we're talking about age tech. And part of that conversation is, the fact that we are living a lot longer now. And as we progress through technology and medical advances and that sort of thing, the number of centenarians, people that live to be over 100, is going to quadruple or something like that in the next 40 years. So I think ageism is something that is going to be something we have to battle for a lot longer period of our life than we did before, right? Talking about us personally, not just us combating it.
And I love the way Eve put it earlier, our housing units are manufactured barriers. That was such a great way to put that.
Mm-hmm.
So, not only is our population aging, our home infrastructure is aging as well, too.
Our homes are the oldest they've ever been. The median age of a U.S. home is 43 years or something like that, which is kind of old. When you see a lack of home maintenance and older homes, it's a risk to safety of the people inside them. And a lot of times people will put off making those changes because of ageism. They may not want to appear old, so they don't put in the grab bars. And so ageism is then impacting their safety in their own home.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. Yeah, I live in a 120-year-old farmhouse, so mine is not updated properly.
You've got a lot of work ahead of you.
I do have a lot of work.
You'll be a good role model for the rest of us.
Eve, let's come back to you about what inspired you to focus on.
That kind of relates to what I'm saying about what really inspired me was I became a certified aging in place specialist toward the end of my father's life. By then, he had pretty limited mobility, and I realized that his home environment was working against him. He couldn't even get into his primary bathroom because the doorway was too narrow for his walker. So here's this 85-year-old man who has to walk down the hall to go to the bathroom. He has to go down the stairs to take a shower. So yes, the fact is we're living longer. We have medical advances. We have technology. But as I say, what good are those extra years if you can't get into your own bathroom? So it became, the need was right in front of my eyes. And so I think I'm most inspired by making life better for my future self and for everybody else's future selves. So
that couldn't be more beautiful. All right, Cindy, your turn.
I mean, how do you follow that? But I will say, working with people like Eve and Jim at EXP as agents that really do see the need inspires me. We get calls daily for, transferees that are corporate transferees that are transferring with aging parents. And that need, we all have heard of the next gen home building movement. And is that next gen movement really what aging parents are needing? Wider doorways, grab bars, and just the ability to move within your home, but have that space. And because of that, we started to really look into different programs that are out there and just inspiring and making sure that people do understand that there is a big need for senior advocacy and combating ageism within our communities. And it really does. I don't have a personal story like Eve has, but it's those personal stories that make me want to do better.
That's it. You draw inspiration from the people in your life like Eve. To me, the podcast episode that we filmed last year, Eve, was so inspiring to me and really changed the way that I looked at age and the way that I looked at the Seniors Network. And it's something that stuck with me. So if I was going to answer this question, why do I care so much about seniors? I'd say you had a big impact on that.
Wow. Thanks.
I agree.
Okay, I'll keep going.
And it also there's a bit of the aging in place that strikes me. I can relate because my father is a quadriplegic. He has been since 1994. So the way that his home was built, really is sort of in the same vein of the way we should be looking at a home for our seniors. There's a lot of automation. There's a lot of pocket doors. There's a lot of long door handles that someone with limited mobility in their hands can use. High countertops with nothing underneath, so you can pull a chair underneath. An open shower that he can go into in a wheelchair. So it's something I didn't realize I already knew a lot about.
So it was just the home that you were in. It was just
Yeah, right.
And that's part of the thing. It should be seamless. You shouldn't have to notice it. That's what universal design and is capable of.
Yeah, right.
So,
I mean, his home looks like a house to anybody, and then once they see him interacting in it, they're like, "Oh, this is really cool."
Yeah, and it looks good too.
Yeah. Now his house hasn't been updated since 1994 because my dad is old school, but there's a lot more that could be done now to make his house more accessible if he would,
more accessible.
The internet in his house and not believe that it, turns the amphibians.
So he's one of the 4% that doesn't have it.
He's not a technology guy, but we'll get there. He also is someone who, in 1994, was told he had about 6 years to live, and it's 2024, and he's still kicking. So,
wow, that's inspiring too.
Yeah, it's great. Cindy, I'm going to come back around to you for a question. What are some of the unique strengths and advantages that seniors bring to the table in the workplace, in the community, in the home? What are those strengths that seniors bring that are unique?
Lots of strengths in various aspects of life. Their experiences and perspectives can significantly enrich not only the workplace, but just community involvement, family dynamics. They bring a very strong work ethic. And like I said, mentorship. One of my biggest, achievements in life was getting able to have that relationship with my elders in my family, and sitting at the at their foot and just listening to stories and things like that. They just have they've lived life, and they have so much experiences to share with us. And I think that as we see various generations that are getting older, that the whole thing to combat ageism is to listen and bring that knowledge. They bring a perspective of patience, experience, and wisdom. And I think that right there in a nutshell is where we can all learn from.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think, when I'm talking to a realtor and they can relate to what I need out of my home, that's when you draw from a wealth of experience that's greater than somebody that's younger. That's an innate.
Well, and I think too, as a brokerage, we have a responsibility to listen and learn and hear the needs of what our clients truly do. And having, the SRES designation will allow more people to be open of what their needs are, what they're looking for, and how they can age gracefully in their own homes.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Jim, same question. What do you see as the unique strengths that seniors bring to the table?
Well, like Cindy said, I lean into that experience level. There's such a strength in that we many times overlook. And one of the worst comments I hear that just kind of rankles me every time is when somebody says something to the effect of, "Hey, would you look at that little old lady over there?" You know what? I know a number of, I'm going to use air quotes here, little old ladies who had fantastic careers, from business to teaching to whatever they did. I know a number of cute little grandpas who ran Fortune 100 companies. Let's tap into that. Let's bring them into our community. I don't want to set them apart. I want to be part of who they are, what they are, and where they are, especially.
Now, can I back you up with a study by AARP?
Please do, Eve.
Yes, showed both old and young want intergenerational reciprocal mentoring. They want that exchange of ideas. They don't want to just have it one way. And that companies when you have generations working together, you end up with greater knowledge transfer, greater mentoring, and it cuts time and cost for training. So it benefits everybody. So older people bring a lot of benefit in addition to all this experience and wisdom and patience and gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so, and you
Very
know,
well said.
I love what you said about it going both ways too, because I'm struck by, we have a young professionals network here at EXP. They do a Friday mastermind every Friday. The people that go to those masterminds is not just young people. We have a number of seniors that attend to learn from the younger generation. People, that's a misconception that we got seniors out here that are stuck in their ways, and now, you know, there is that cross-generational thing.
Yeah.
Where
Well,
everybody's willing to learn
You
from
guys are
everybody.
inviting the older adults too, and that's super important. They have to be invited, and because the first thing you hear young professionals, oh well, they don't want me there,
Yeah.
but
They do.
Right.
They absolutely do. Yeah.
What you're saying, Eve, is we've outlived the young professionals.
well, it's like when we call this seniors network, it's the same thing. It's not just for seniors. So how do we communicate that and also identify, the focus?
And guess who we lean on time and time and time again for educational pieces? YP Network.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They bring the education to the table, and it's something that I have said till I'm blue in the face, and I'll continue to say until I'm blue in the face. These networks are not about age. They are a little bit more about experience level, because it's not only for people under 30 in YP and people over 55 in Seniors Network, but it's about people who are senior in their real estate career as well, and people who are new to the real estate business in Young Professionals Network. That is also an aspect of it. We have people who are 65 in the Young Professionals Network who just started doing real estate.
Right.
And
I totally qualify for that. Yeah.
Right.
I'm forever young at heart.
That me too. I look in the mirror and I'm like, who's that guy? I'm 22, right?
I think it really hits you in the face when, I talk about my mentorship and whatnot. Well, now I'm being asked to, mentor a YPN and I'm like, I'm not. No, I'm not there yet in my career, but I really do. Eve, you hit the nail on the head with that. Bringing all aspects, no matter young, old, new, seasoned, and whatnot. It's all about learning and taking what we learn and putting that into play in our day in and day out. And that's, all of us are contributing to a better world.
Yeah, agreed. So now let's really talk about ageism now. So I want to start with Eve. What are some common misconceptions and stereotypes about aging and seniors that you've encountered?
Okay, well, I'll just start with attributing something that is what it is just because I'm old, right? Falling is part of aging, or I'm too old to go hiking. So, or I have a pain, but I'm not going to deal with it because that's just because I'm old. But if I dealt with it, maybe I could make it better before it got worse. So this is one way that believing negative ageist stereotypes can affect your physical health and become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're saying I can't go hiking or I'm too old to start running, then you're not going to get as much exercise and your health is going to get poorer. So the fact is that the 65 plus age group is the most heterogeneous of any age group. The diversity is amazing. So you cannot reliably predict anything solely based on age. And another thing, if I've got time to mention, another assumption we make is about technology. We were just talking about that, assuming older adults aren't tech savvy or they can't learn new technology. When the fact is that older adults has been shown now they're on par with younger people in their use of devices. 96% of people 50 and older use the internet. 96%. And 75% of people, it was 96% of people 50 and over and 75% of people 65 and older. So they have this proven adaptability. And I can share something about my mother. She grew up with the Iceman coming to her house and the Milkman coming to her house and FDR as president. And now she's banking online and ordering off Instacart, and she's working her voice activated Google, and so they're adaptable. It can happen. We have to be open to that and get rid of those assumptions.
Yeah, that's, and it's part of that is there's a piece there that really struck me about sort of self-ageism, right? Where I assume I can't do something because I'm old, and we don't dig any deeper into that. I think that's part of the reason my dad doesn't adopt technology is he believes he can't, right? And that's an ageist belief.
Well, it's overwhelming, and
And I say to him, look, you've owned an automotive and towing and salvage business for 40 years. You know everything there is to know about every car on the market. You are capable of learning how to operate Google.
Right? Have you helped him? Are you the geek squad for your dad?
I don't live close enough. He's got some folks around him, but I don't. I live all the way across the country from him, where I would be more there doing more.
Yeah.
Does he FaceTime? I mean, little things like that. It's just, hey,
He FaceTimed me on accident once.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the misconceptions is because, younger generations put that on as well. It's not just so much, I'm old, so I can't. It's, we say you can't do that because you're frail.
Yeah,
or you're stuck in your ways and you've got the inability to adapt, or you're not as focused. Your mental abilities diminish when you get, over 50, over 55, over 65. Some of the most intelligent and mental awareness, people that I know are in their 70s and 80s.
Sure.
And, it's just, we put labels. We love to label people. And that's the biggest, we're putting stereotypes on people.
Yeah.
And, we've just got to stop and realize that, everybody brings equal abilities to the table, and it has nothing to do with your age.
Well, the thing is, and some things that become more difficult for older adults, these devices themselves are not designed with older adults in mind. They've got tiny buttons, and there are no manuals.
Yes.
So they do need someone or, some sort of program that takes them through it step by step.
Absolutely.
And that's not always available. And so they just say, oh, forget it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so much of our technology is tied to a phone. And my dad can operate a smartphone. He doesn't have use of his hands.
Yeah.
So the voice assist really does help there. And he actually, I say all of this, he actually does know how to use. I don't want to set everybody's off, but the woman who lives inside your Apple devices, he knows how to use that.
She's always there.
Yeah, she's always listening.
Sometimes
you can always find what I need.
Yeah. Jim, what about you? You have any common misconceptions about aging or seniors you'd share?
Well, I think same as has already been said. You run into that constantly, that you can't do something because you're older, and on the other side of it, the expectation of society that you shouldn't or can't do something because you're aged, you're infirm, you're not. And making these assumptions based on stereotypes is a horrible thing. I will jump in there with a quick anecdote that I think is pretty funny for myself about that whole, I shouldn't really be doing this because of my age. I actually belong to a fitness center that caters to the 55 and up. And during one of the assessments, I said, I shouldn't be doing deadlifts because of my age. And they said, well, show me how you do one. So I went over to the bar and they said, well, first of all, you shouldn't do that because you're doing it wrong.
Right.
Let me show you how to do it right, and you can do these things. So, gosh, look at me, look at my age, and I can learn new things. Let's stop assuming that people who are aging are just set in their ways. They don't want to. They're not interested in it. No, everybody wants to learn and present those opportunities.
Absolutely. I mean, I without my consent, was watching RFK Jr.'s workout routine yesterday, and that man, he's a senior, and a worm apparently ate part of his brain, but he deadlifts, right? So, I mean, he's someone who has a very extreme workout regimen that most people probably would fall into that stereotype and say he shouldn't be doing that at his age.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But look at him. He can do it.
But look at him. He absolutely can do it. He does it every day. Yeah. Let's talk about, so what about some practical steps that individuals and organizations can take to combat ageism and promote a more inclusive society? How do we fight ageism? I'll start with you, Jim.
I think one of the biggest things we can do is what we're doing right here. Mm-hmm. It's inclusiveness. It's being inclusive as opposed to exclusive. Again, let's not put people in a box. Let's not put them on the side. Let's bring them in. Let someone decide if they want to do something or not. You know, if there's technology that's available, let's let them decide if they want to interact with it or not, and not just make those assumptions. So I think one of the best things we can do is just continue these conversations, these topics, and just, you know, let's be inclusive as opposed to exclusive.
That's it. And I'll take an answer on this question. I think we often think of ageism as something that's not as serious or as pressing as something of the other isms, right?
Mhm.
Like racism or sexism or homophobia or those sorts of things, right? But that thought process makes it worse because it's so insidious and we do it casually.
Right.
That's
Right? We don't even realize some of the things that we say that are ageist, that are just based on biases that are in our head from society, from our upbringing, from being around older people when we were younger, from television, from all those different sources have baked this ageism in. And there's nobody out there yelling from the rooftops that it's wrong.
Right.
Right. So we need to be those voices of people who speak up against ageism. I think it's really important. I got corrected once last year. I was like, sorry, I'm late. I had a senior moment. And somebody was like, no, don't do that. Right. You know what I mean? Like that's
that's your implicit bias. That's your internalized ageism showing.
That's exactly those. Yes.
So
That's the
you
big word
never
answer for
see
it.
it. You never see it until somebody will point out, hey, let's change this way of thinking. Let's encourage people of all different ages to interact, challenge those stereotypes and educate.
Right.
Because just, ageism is just another one of those isms, and it should be taken just as seriously as any other stereotype.
Yeah, like if you say, you shouldn't wear that because you're old, or you shouldn't say that because it makes you sound old. If you replace the word old with gay or black, Macedonian,
Right.
you can't say that. Don't say it.
Right.
So
Yes.
confronting our implicit bias, if I can throw some websites out at you in ways because research has shown what you're saying, which is if we look at it and we confront it, we can reduce ageism. It works if we're aware of it. So there's this cool test. Harvard has an implicit association test online. It's at implicit.harvard.edu, and it's implicit association test, and it will show you where you are on the scale. And don't be surprised, because over 75% of the people that take this test are biased against older adults. So, but the great news is you take this test, that's in and of itself is going to reduce your bias. There's also a wonderful organization that is shouting it from the rooftops, and we can amplify it. There's reframingaging.org, which has a whole bunch of toolkits and things you can download and what to say and what not to say. And then there's the American Society on Aging is getting us ready for Ageism Awareness Day on October 9th. And at their website, at asaging.org, you can download their social media toolkits, and you can amplify and you can share and you can spread the word and those kinds of things. So we can educate ourselves, and then we can take that word out to others.
That's brilliant. I love it. So just a really high level on that, I would challenge everyone that's listening to this, whether you consider yourself an expert on the topic of ageism or not, to watch your thoughts, watch what you say, and see if you can spot those telltale signs of your brain pulling you towards an ageism, some sort of thought there. If you feel that tug, call it out, name it.
And it's not something, to be ashamed of or to judge other people on. It's just, it's like, look at it as a scientist. This is interesting. Why did you say that? Why did I say that? Well, it's not my fault. It's society. Interesting. I don't have to do that anymore.
Right.
There it is. And then you move on. I have a whole training on unconscious bias that's available to anybody that wants to take it. And part of that is knowing that biases are something that are baked into us societally and genetically. Absolutely. And those sort of things. But it's something that we can notice and change. They're not forever, right? It's something that your brain does to make shortcuts, because that's what our brains have to do to take in all of the information that we take in on a daily basis. If you think about all of the sights and sounds and colors and words and all this that your brain is taking in, you naturally have to make shortcuts. Some of those shortcuts are dangerous. or hurtful,
Well,
or
just not to cut you off, but just as an example, how many of us have been sitting at a table and you have somebody that is older, and I can be having a conversation with Cody and Jim and Eve, and I turn to, the little old lady at the table, and I raise my voice because she's not going to hear me.
Mm-hmm.
It's little things like that she could have perfect hearing.
Right.
She could have assistance in hearing with, I mean, I don't know how many of you guys have, hearing aids. You can't see them anymore. They're not the big clunky things that we used to have when we were developing hearing assistance and things like that. So just one little thing that I'm not an expert on it. I'm not quite there yet, but I want to be available to learn and then be able to see how I'm going to interact and get over those stereotypes.
Yeah, it's something that I teach and I'll preach to the rooftops and all this kind of business is the very best trait a human being can have is the ability to take in new information and change their mind. Right.
Absolutely.
So there you go.
And it starts with
challenge assumptions.
Yeah.
Challenge assumptions.
I mean, it starts with each individual that's willing to learn and make the change. It's very simple. Very simple to do.
It's that, I always tell people if we do things a certain way because that's the way it's always been done, challenge that. Follow that deeper into your thought process. If I think this way because that's the way I always thought, challenge that.
Right. Absolutely.
It's good. Leads to personal growth. So I want to talk about more broadly the senior community and the sort of what are the most pressing challenges that seniors face today, and what can we do to better support them through those challenges? I'll start with Jim.
I think some of the biggest challenges, gosh, we've just spent the last 20 minutes talking about some of the top challenges, and from where I stand, the challenge that the senior community faces is that inclusionary bias, that exclusionary bias that we seem to have, that we want to put them in a box, put them in a corner, and as opposed to celebrating and engaging and including them in everything. There are absolutely some issues that come with mobility, maybe some cognitive, but if we focus on what can't be done, we miss a huge swath of what can be done. So let's focus on the positives, the elements that are brought to the table, as opposed to what we have to adapt to in order to include someone. So let's look at the positive as opposed to the negatives.
I love that. Cindy, what about you? What do you see as the most pressing challenges facing our senior community?
Healthcare is huge, and just the tools that, we need to incorporate better. Eve said it, we've got all this technology and it doesn't come with a manual. So if you don't know somebody that understands that technology, you're not going to adapt to that technology because you don't even know how to get the answers to answer the questions that you may have.
Right.
So I just think that, we can find ways to better support everybody in each life stage that we are at. But the healthcare, how many of us don't want to go because you don't want to hear the answer, or you don't want to be taken seriously because you're just getting older? You're going to have aches and pains, and things like that. So that's, kind of my two cents worth as far as challenges that we are seeing. And again, common denominator here is we can always do better as a generation, and supporting generations.
Yeah. And, I would say on this point that the seniors in my life who I've loved and who have influenced me and who I wouldn't be who I am without their influence, what they were missing in their lives was someone to advocate for them. And so I think just like any other community that our 1EXP resource groups represent, allyship is gigantic. Allyship is so important. It should not be on seniors to advocate for seniors, right? It should not be on seniors to fight ageism. It should be on those of us who have the seats at the table that seniors aren't sitting at to advocate for them. And I think that's so important because it's so easy to let someone just wallow, right? Just flounder. And we live in a world with technology, and there's support there. There's community there that is easier to access than it ever has been before.
Yeah.
They just have to have somebody there that's willing to advocate for them and show them those things, right?
Yes,
what about you, Abe?
that really all comes to, all these things that we're talking about do come down to being where are those resources? They're out there, but seniors aren't aware of them, and where are the people to help them navigate? So I think that's always a big piece of this. I think one of the things, wasn't my top one, but elder abuse and fraud is humongous, and that also has to do with them not knowing where to turn, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to navigate this technology because they haven't been told. Don't respond to a pop-up ad or whatever it is. So older adults, there's a figure that it cost them $28 billion they lost in frauds, and that over half of older adults that are victims of fraud don't even report it because they're embarrassed or they don't know where to turn. So again, making them aware of where to turn and how to report it, and advocating to take the shame out of being a victim. And to tell them,
and there's such a misconception there too. People think I've seen a story about this recently on the news that are our seniors getting worse at detecting fraud? That is not the case. Fraudsters are getting smarter.
They're getting very smarter,
and that is so easy to demonstrate.
Don't put it on the seniors.
Don't put it on the seniors.
I'd like to think that I wouldn't fall victim, but if somebody called me and sounded like my son and in distress, I don't know what would happen to my brain.
Absolutely.
So the repetition and the education and the reaching out will help really alleviate a lot of these things. I don't know if that's going to help the financial insecurity that so many older adults have, and that's a big problem. I mean, we think boomers, we always hear about how they have all this money and all this equity, and some of them do, but some of them don't. There's millions of seniors that are not going to be able to afford to take care of themselves, and they're not going to know where to go for care. So that's a huge problem. And I don't know what the solution is, other than to say, well, we need to have, more education and more free clinics and more this and more that. That's great, but that's a big issue.
Well, I think having that awareness, though, Eve, is one of the first steps to it. That everyone having the awareness. Now let's figure solutions. And not one solution is going to fit. We're going to have myriad solutions to help them navigate those pathways.
Yeah. And to me, it comes back to advocacy. I would bet, I've never seen a study on this, but I would bet that the number of seniors who, when they encounter one of these issues of elder abuse or fraud, if they had someone they could trust to ask, does this seem right to you? It would cut the amount that it gets past them down significantly. So I want to talk about, we talked a little bit when we were talking about YP earlier, but about intergenerational connections, and what role do you think intergenerational connections play in combating ageism and fostering mutual understanding? I actually want to start on this one. Something that my family knows about me. Everybody thought I was weird or an old soul when I was younger, because I had a great grandmother, Jimmy Lou Burnett, who was one of the most impactful people in my life. When I was learning piano, she was the only person that had a piano in her house. So I had to go over and do my piano practice at her house. And people were genuinely afraid of me going over there and being alone with her, because she was known as being sort of a mean old woman, right? And she was someone who the whole family had given this nickname, Grandma Grunt, because every time she stood up from the couch, she grunted, right? And they had boiled her into this stereotype of, she's funny to laugh at when she stands up, and she's mean as a snake, so don't engage her in conversation. The person whose house I was at while I was learning piano and struggling and crying through piano lessons is not that person, right? That doesn't sum her up in the slightest. It's one of these people, I don't like using this term because it's implicit ageist in its way, but she was sharp as a tack, right? She lived to be 88 years old and had full capability of her mind like a 16-year-old until she was 87. When she developed dementia, it ended her life pretty quickly. But in that time when I was growing up and I spent that time with her, she was someone who would dance next to the piano when I would play songs that she liked the beat of, right? And when I would tell these stories to other people in my family, they would say, "You have a really active imagination,"
Hmm.
right? They couldn't imagine this woman
Hmm.
being more than those couple of things
Right.
they'd pigeonholed her as, right?
Mhm.
And she was someone who gave me some of the deepest and most profound advice and gave me words that I live by to this day and showed me just a lot of things about the past that informed how I looked at the present. She lived through the Great Depression. She lived through, her husband was a butcher and her dad was a milkman, and, things that we don't have now that I know about that
Right.
kids my age did, right?
Mhm.
Um, and she's somebody that is with me to this day, and I carry her with me in a way that I think other members of my family don't. They just remember her as, oh, you remember Grandma Grunt? But I remember her as like a whole person,
Whole person. Yeah.
Yeah.
right? That was deep and had anger, and her husband died, and she thought, this is the love of my life, and we're going to die together, and she lived for 38 years without him, right? She was someone who had a lot of sorrow and never was given the ability to express that unless she was with me, who was 10, right? You know? And that kind of intergenerational connection is something that absolutely changed my life. I
And
would
we
not
all
be
need.
who I am without her.
Well, it's like what you said about your other relatives that they couldn't imagine. We can't imagine, but the first-hand experience teaches us that you had that changed your
Mhm.
perception. First-hand experience. So when you talk about multi-generational, yeah, get people together.
Absolutely.
Have shared spaces in the community. Multi-generational living is on the rise, and it's not just financial. A lot of people get a lot of emotional value out of living with multiple generations. So yeah, so when you see the firsthand and you have that interaction, it changes things. So that's a big value in multi-generational interactions.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, another thing that's been shown by research over and over and over again are, having that relationship does two great things. First of all, with the youth, which Cody, I kind of heard it in your story, it gives them a sense of confidence,
Hmm.
not just the education, but also a sense of confidence because I know something. It's been passed down by somebody who's been there, and from the senior side of it, it gives a sense of purpose. So you've got these two great things going on at once. And, my question is always, why don't we do this more? So,
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think it's all about making yourself open to those sort of,
um,
connections with someone that's outside of your age bracket,
yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will say that one thing that I've learned in my life is, we all hear about the words you shouldn't say or you shouldn't use and whatnot. One of the words that I try to not use anytime in my vocabulary is I can't. And
Mhm.
it was my elders and my family that taught me that, if you put your mind to it and somebody tells you you can't do something, then you try even that much harder to overcome that because you can. And you don't give up until you've, exhausted every single possibility to make that a realization that you can do this. And I think that because I was there's a lot of people my age that did not grow up with grandparents, with great grandparents, and things like that. I had a great grandmother that her only bucket list left in life was to make it to Willard Scott's on the Today Show 100th birthday. And do you know that woman died the day after her 100th birthday? And she was on Willard Scott. Um, and she was 98 years old, still walking 2 miles a day. Now, did it take her a little bit longer to walk those 2 miles? Absolutely. As she got older, it might, but she was out there and she was doing it every single day. So I think that by having those intergenerational interactions, really, if you get past the typical stereotype of that person just likes to tell stories, and if you start a conversation, you're going to be there forever. So
Right.
let's just not start that conversation. Start those conversations. Take the time to listen and learn because they have so much experience. They have so much patience. They have so much to share. And I want to be that person one day that's 88 years old saying, come on, let's go for a 2-mile walk today. Not that, hey, I'm 88 years old and I can't do it because society has told me I can't do it.
Right.
You know, we've all seen the commercials, the I've fallen and I can't get up, and you got to have your button and you've got to have this, you know. And the other thing that I just wanted to kind of touch on too is, you know, I live in Houston, Texas, and we're having triple digit weather now that it's in the middle of, or, you know, we started August. What's the one thing the news says almost every day? Check on your elders.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not okay. So make sure you're checking on them. And that's the type of ageism and stereotype that we see day in and day out that we learn from. This is mainstream news. So have those conversations, put those you know, that older generation in your tribe, in your circle. Have those conversations. There's so much to learn from, just as much as there's, you know, I learned from my 19, 26, and 27-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't discount them because they're not old enough to know something.
Right.
They've got a wealth of information just like, you know, our elder generation.
Those great points. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, ageism works both ways. So yes, yes.
Absolutely.
It's a big tent. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It sure does. All right. We're coming up on time, guys. This has been a lovely conversation. I'd love to continue it. Maybe we do a part 2 of this in the future.
Oh yeah, count me
I
in.
love it.
Sure. It's rich.
Yes.
It's a rich and deep pool of stuff we can dive into here. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and joining us. So stay tuned to more DEI content. Follow us on YouTube at DEI@EXP. To check out the Seniors Network, go into Workplace and look for EXP Seniors Network and look at all these guys' names. Follow them on their socials. We will see you next time, and thank you so much for joining us.